There's a new deadly combination of terrorism and technology. ISIS is recruiting new members and spreading its propaganda through popular websites like Twitter and YouTube. And now the jihadis have developed their own smartphone app.
The terrorists also use encryption tools to keep their deadly messages hidden from the government. And law enforcement is trying to figure out ways to break those codes. Heather Sells has the story.
The recent terror attacks in Paris and San Bernardino have renewed the debate. How can the government gain access to encrypted terror communications? Earlier this year, authorities ran into this problem. They weren't able to decrypt more than 100 messages sent by one of the terrorists who attacked a Texas cartoon exhibit involving Islam. The FBI says that government needs a way to access these encrypted communications and that companies need to help.
Lots of good people have designed their systems and their devices so that judges' orders cannot be complied with for reasons that I understand. I'm not questioning their motivations.
But Director Comey told lawmakers this week that many companies have figured out how to provide secure services to their customers and still comply with court orders. He insisted that the government does not want a, quote, back door, but asked the tech world to create a solution.
The question we have to ask is, should they change their business model? That is a very, very hard question. Lots of implications to that. We have to wrestle with it because of what's at stake.
Privacy advocates and industry groups have plenty of concerns about weakening encryption. One practical issue, a tech company could inadvertently turn over innocent citizens' communications. The government is mounting pressure on social media companies to be looking out for terrorist propaganda. But civil liberties experts say watch out. Censoring or monitoring content at the government's request becomes a slippery slope, as well as determining the difference between political speech and terrorism. But the government is also scrambling to keep up with ISIS's sophisticated use of technology in other areas. ABC News reports ISIS can now produce fake passports using a passport machine likely captured in Syria. And a hacker collective called the Ghost Security Group says ISIS has developed its own smartphone app. It reportedly features the latest ISIS executions and battlefield victories. The terrorists have also been heavily using social media accounts. It all shows that ISIS is extremely adept at using online technology for recruiting, which means it could become more capable of radicalizing more people and carrying out more deadly attacks. Heather Sells, CBN News.
Well, it's typical. The government is asking for more surveillance in the wake of this and more access to communications by ordinary citizens in order to somehow stop this, without realizing that doesn't do anything. We have voluntarily given up our civil liberties in an elusive pursuit of security. What we really need to be asking is, how did this woman get a visa? How did they get into the country? What was that about? Can we stop that? That seems to be a big hole in our security. Why aren't we looking more closely at that? And if they have a passport machine that they can use, why aren't we looking at what does that have any signature marks? Is there any way to track that? Those seem to be, to me at least, the way to give us more security. At the same time, we're not fighting the war on the level it needs to be fought at. You can absolutely win against ISIS. You can put boots on the ground. You can go in there and completely invade and occupy every single city. All of these fighters that are just going to disappear into the woodwork because we are not fighting it on the battleground we need to be. This is a war of ideology. These people think that somehow they're serving God by going into crowded places and killing people. That's their thought process. And until we meet it on that level, that what their thoughts about God are wrong, are absolutely wrong, until we convince them of the error of their thought, we're never going to win this. And that's a very sad truth. Our government doesn't want to call it for what it is. And we need to start saying, this is the problem. We have to change their thinking. Well, another terrorist plot has been uncovered in Europe. This time it was in Switzerland. Ephraim Graham has that story from the CBN newsroom. Ephraim?
Gordon, the latest arrest involves international cooperation. Police in Geneva, Switzerland have been seeking at least 4 suspects linked to ISIS after the CIA uncovered a plot there. A Swiss official confirmed the suspects were 4 men whose photos were shown in a news report in a Swiss paper. And in Paris, French authorities seized heavy ammunition and ISIS propaganda in raids after closing a mosque in a Paris suburb. Here at home, today's secular-driven society seems intent on erasing the rich Christian history and influence in our country. One of the main battlegrounds is Washington, D.C., where one media outlet has created an online site where people can read stories involving Christianity and its values. David Brody has this look at a new venture called Jesus in the Public Square.
The cultural slide in America can be traced back to the 60s when the Supreme Court said no to prayer in public schools. That led to legalized abortion in the 70s, and now the High Court says there's a constitutional right to same-sex marriage.
Somebody's values are going to reign supreme, so our goal is to bring our values to the public square.
David Lane with the American Renewal Project first moved toward that goal by urging pastors to get involved in the political process. His next challenge? Getting Jesus into the public discussion. It came about after a visit to a D.C. bookstore.
You couldn't find a Christian book with a flashlight, and it hit me again. Isn't this awful? A nation founded by people on a religious mission, the Mayflower Compact, for the glory of God and the advancement of the Christian faith, in the nation's capital, and you can't find a book or Jesus anywhere. And if the Lord does it, we're going to put Jesus right up in the middle of the table in Washington, D.C. He will defend himself.
That table opened up at the Washington Times. Lane planted a seed with management, which led to a website feature handled by Scott Lamb.
Jesus in the Public Square at the Washington Times hopes to talk about and dialogue with people to show them that Jesus Christ and his lordship is a universal theme, and they should submit to that.
The fact that this effort takes place on a major outlet's website is significant, and so far it's a hit. In the first 2 months, the site had nearly 200,000 page views, making it one of the top 5 most read communities on the Washington Times site.
We felt like we had a hole in there. We had a hole for faith coverage and faith issues. The intersection of faith and public policy, the intersection of faith and politics is larger and larger every day, and it's more complicated. I think that if you come to the Jesus Public Square and you read something there, you're almost certain to learn something that you didn't get to read somewhere else.
Some of the more popular stories featured biblical economics, and another one with a pro-choice journalist who became pro-life after watching the recent Planned Parenthood videos.
We're not looking to do 500 pieces a day. We're looking to do 4, 5, 6 pieces a day that talks about gospel-driven things that really exalts Jesus Christ and gets people thinking. We hope to have a ripple effect outward so that churches are stronger and that individual families are stronger and that people who are not Christian now come into the family of God.
Ultimately, Lane says that the name Jesus in the Public Square reminds us that all truth is God's truth. And for America to change course, the people need to hear his word in a desperate way. Lane is optimistic.
God is in the business of resurrection. I believe there's going to be a resurrection of America, literally.
David Brody, CBN News, Washington.
This year, more French Jews immigrated to Israel than ever before. As Chris Mitchell reports from Ben Gurion Airport, this could be just the beginning of an even greater wave of French immigrants.
In this latest round of immigration, nearly 50 French Jews arrived at Tel Aviv's Ben Gurion Airport. These French Jews are just the tip of the iceberg of the many more Jews still in France that are considering immigrating to Israel.
We'll only be seeing a few dozens immigrants tonight, but throughout 2015, we have had the pleasure to welcome in Israel 8,000 immigrants from France. Last year, 2014, they were 7,200. There is a mass immigration to Israel from France.
Terror attacks in Paris this year, especially the attack on a kosher supermarket, along with rising anti-Semitism, spurred Jews in France to act.
Speaking last week to 2 young French Olim who had just come, they said to us that there isn't a person in France, Jew in France who isn't talking about coming to live in Israel to some extent.
Right now, we can't live Judaism the way we would like to. We're careful not to wear our kippah in the streets. We don't stop living. Like in Israel, they don't stop living with all the terror attacks. In Israel, we'll be able to live our Judaism the way we want.
Yes, the French Jews are afraid, but it's not the only reason they want to come to Israel. It's also about conviction, because we think that for the Jews in France, Israel is the future.
Amar led the lighting of the Hanukkah candles as this group came from the City of Lights, Paris, to the Festival of Lights. They also enjoyed soufganiot, a traditional donut served during the holiday. The immigrants, from toddlers to senior citizens, now start their new life in the land of Israel.
Tonight we got to see the unfolding of the faithfulness of the God of Israel to his people. As was promised in the prophet Isaiah, he's going to bring his people back to Israel from the north, the south, the east, and the west. And tonight we got to welcome people from the west.
This is it. This is where the Jews belong. The Bible, this is where we're supposed to be. There's no question about it. This is the land of the Jews.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Ben Gurion Airport, Tel Aviv.
Gordon, it does look like the beginning of another great wave.
Yes, it does. Aliyah back to Israel, but it's being caused by persecution, and we shouldn't hide that. The chief rabbi of Belgium, Orthodox rabbi of Belgium, said Europe is no longer inhabitable by Jews because of the rise of anti-Semitism, the rise of attacks against Jews that are specifically motivated by religion. That is a stunning thing. And if you think we're somehow immune from it here in the United States, just go to the FBI website. They're tasked with tracking hate crimes. And when you look under hate crimes for religion in America, there were over 1,200 of them in the past year. And 60% of those hate crimes were against Jews. That's a stunning statistic. When you think after 9/11, well, certainly Muslims would be a target. No. If you look at the hate crimes that the FBI tracks, only 14% of them are against Muslims. 60% are against Jews. So something's going on that is incredible. You look at how in the world is there anti-Semitism in the world after all we've learned from World War II. Why is this still here? It's still here, and it's causing Jews to go back to Israel.